For me, the answer is always in community. We don't have investors. I can't afford to do PR. We don't pay influencers. We're not the cool kids. So I guess like tapping into community and being a part of that community is the strategy that we've used.
Hey there, everybody. It is Dani Valent with you for another episode of Dirty Linen. Gotta say, I really love doing this podcast. It is such a privilege to chat to my guests, and I never take for granted the privilege of you putting this in your ears, letting it filter into your brain and perhaps make you think. So thank you very much for giving us the time. Now, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you'll know that we've been coming back to this huge question of hospitality and whether or not it is broken. We've been talking about it on the podcast, but as I go about my daily life, it is something that I know is resonating with a lot of people in the hospitality world, and indeed people who just enjoy eating in restaurants, especially perhaps if they love eating in restaurants, but they're not able to do it as much as they once were able to, simply because things are a bit tighter. Meals have had to go up in price. These are the realities that a lot of people are facing. We've had a lot of communication from you guys out there about hospitality, and someone who got in touch to chat about this issue is Billy Crombie. So Billy is the co-owner of Babaji's, a restaurant that has two outlets, one in Warburton and one in Belgrave, sort of on the outskirts of Melbourne, in the leafy hills. Billy has a lot to say about how to create hospitality and community. Billy, welcome to Dirty Linen.
G'day, mate. Thanks so much for having us. Have a little yarn.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you. Tell us about Babaji's. What are you up to out there?
Oh my gosh. So Babaji's is about 10 years now. I should know, but I've lost track. We started as a little market stall at the markets around here, and we started that way because we didn't have any capital. And then we opened a restaurant. We opened a little takeaway shop in Belgrave, but then extended into the next door. And that's been going for about 6 years. And then recently we've opened a much bigger restaurant up in Warburton. Our journey, I think, we didn't, even though we were South Indian, we didn't identify with our community that we were South Indian, because the Dandenong Ranges is not known for its diversity, and their knowledge of things like a dosa and uttapam and idli and all those things wasn't very strong. So we were cooking South Indian food, but we weren't telling people that. And then in the last couple of years, we kind of started to understand our point of difference and what we should be doing. So we even changed our name. We couldn't change the name Babaji's, which to people that are not Indian won't understand that that's not actually a very South Indian name. We couldn't change that name because we were too well known from cooking at festivals. But so we became Babaji's Kerala Kitchen, and we just started to focus very much on that. And that's, and now we have two restaurants in places that you wouldn't expect a South Indian restaurant to be. One in Belgrave in the Dandenong Ranges, and the other one is in Warburton.
Billy, tell us who we is.
I should. We is myself and my husband, who's from Kerala in South India. His name is stuttering. Please don't put that in. Max, and he came out to Australia. Again, about 10 years ago. He used to run a restaurant in Kerala. That's where I met him, and eventually when I managed to get him over here, because he wouldn't leave Kerala for a long time because it's a very beautiful spot of a world, he came over here and started again. Worked in restaurants as a dishy, wasn't really respected, wasn't paid properly, wasn't coping with being in this country. So that was when we realised, okay, if this is going to survive, we need to put you back in the space that you're passionate about. And that's why we started as a market stall.
Wow, what a story. Tell me about when you guys met.
I was backpacking. I was that hippie girl. And I was backpacking, and Max is from a place called Varkala, which is an hour north of Trivandrum. And it's a beautiful place. It's on the Arabian Ocean. There's a cliff top, and all the restaurants are overlooking the ocean. So he had a restaurant where you'd sit at your table at the restaurant and you'd be watching the dolphins jump and the swordfish going, and you'd sit there and you'd enjoy your chai and you'd enjoy your fresh fish. I think Aussies probably would understand it a bit more like Bali. It was like Uluwatu. I think it's called Uluwatu in Bali. It's a little bit more like that, so Aussies might be able to relate to that. And Max was at the fish table. He was serving fish. He was deciding how much people were going to pay, which is pretty funny. So, depending, and I what can I say? I just fell in love with this person who actually his English was very average. Didn't really understand that even till he came to Australia. And I just knew that was what was going to happen. And so I spent a lot of time in Kerala, probably 5 years in and out of Kerala, and was helping him run that restaurant. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow. And I mean, what's the scene there like? Like how formal is the restaurant? Like, is this a place that travellers would come? Would, big local family groups come? Are people booking? Are they just rolling up? Like, what's the vibe?
So, look, it's changed really significantly since I was there with him. He goes home every year, but it's changed really significantly. So back then the vibe was mainly travellers, mainly like hippie travellers, if we want to put them in a box. But that has changed really significantly because obviously COVID happened, and so people weren't able to travel over there. And there's, with the rise of the middle class of India, there's now a lot more Indians actually discovering their own country. So whereas before you wouldn't really see the Indians eating at that kind of restaurant, they would eat at the street restaurants, they'd eat at the toddy shops, but you wouldn't see them in those kinds of spaces. But these days it's probably 95% Indians that are exploring their country.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned, Billy, that, the hills to the east of Melbourne are not super diverse. It's not one of the most multicultural parts of this vast city. But are there things about the hills that do recall southern India?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So I grew up in the hills, and I'm very much a nature person and I'm very much a community-oriented person. And when Max eventually came out to Australia, I wasn't intending on us staying in the hills. I thought that he would appreciate a bit more diversity than what the hills can offer. But when he came over and started to get settled, he then realised that this is where he wanted to be. And one of the reasons for that is it's so much like Kerala. So the Dandenong Ranges are, but Warburton even more. So it feels like you're up in the Western Ghats. There's nature all around. There's forests, there's rivers, there's waterfalls. So it's not like Kerala. We're not talking about maybe the perception of crazy India. Kerala is a relaxed, chilled out kind of place with lots of nature around you, and that is what the Dandenong Ranges and the restaurant at Warburton is like.
So, Billy, when you talk about, what you're doing, the way you've built it, you've got 2 restaurants. We know that a lot of people are finding hospitality hard. How are you making your businesses work?
Yeah, I guess but for me, the answer is always in community. Um, it came about like that for us because we don't have investors. I can't afford to do PR. We don't pay influencers. We're not the cool kids, and we're not in a restaurant hotspot. We're out in the middle of Belgrave. So I guess like tapping into community and being a part of that community is the strategy that we've used right throughout when we started. And that's not easy as a brown business. So like obviously in our community, people love pizza, people love American pulled meat types of restaurants and burgers. And Indian is not the obvious choice, and South Indian definitely not. And I think it's harder for ethnic businesses in places like this to engage in community. But that's what we've done from the start. And we are lucky because I am from this community. So I did grow up here. There are things I understand about this community and why it's different to some places. So I guess we've had to be resilient and we've had to be creative because all those reasons. And yeah, it's still like the reason that we're here. And we do things like community days where once a month we give 10% of our sales to a local community group. And that might be the local choir, the local scouts. And basically that fills our restaurant. And the goodwill that comes from that, it fills our restaurants not just for that day, but for the months following. That's one of the things. And I think like we know we're not a standalone business. We know we're a part of this community and this community will hold us. That sounds like a very hippie thing to say. I used to be a hippie, but now I own a business. I'm a bit less hippie than I was. But and there are opportunities. For example, up here, there's been a lot of trauma up here. We had the Kalorama storms. About 3 years ago, there was a major storm up here, which I don't think Melbourne understood how bad that was. A lot of people lost their housing. It was a terrifying time up in Mount Dandenong, Alinda. We personally lost our electricity for about 6 weeks. And at that time, I was like, we were talking about it, and it's like, we can't use chainsaws, but we can cook. Right, I'm not giving my husband and our team a chainsaw. They've got no idea, but they can cook, and we wanted to help. So for when that happened, we decided that we were going to feed the Mount Dandenong Kalorama community every week. We were going to come up there and we were going to serve them a butter chicken, which is nothing South Indian about that, but the kids love it. And we were going to do that every week for free, 500 serves until the power came back on. And we put it out there, and then I thought, oh shit, mate, we've just survived COVID. We've got no money. What are you doing? You can't afford that. What are you doing? But we used our socials to tell people, and then the community looked after us, and the community of the Dandenong Ranges and much further afield started donating to that. So we were there cooking for about 5 weeks, I think it was, and it was fully donated. It was fully paid for by our community. So totally unexpected. We were willing to put ourselves out there. We were willing to support our community, but our community supported us in helping the wider community during that time.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, it's like you. What lesson do you draw from that?
Yeah, I guess, like I say, there's there's lots of lessons from that, isn't it? It's like, I guess just as a business, and As a restaurant, knowing like you are not a standalone business, you are a part of a community. That community does not even need to be a demographic community. It might be an ethnic community, which of course we have our Kerala community as well, who come from us all over Victoria. It might be an online community. So it might be our food truck community, for example. But we're a part of a community, and we need to tap into that community and work together.
That's so wise, I think, to think about community in all those different ways, and that there are communities that you can support and that will hopefully support you in turn. It's really powerful. I mean, Billy, you mentioned that you started the whole business with $100. Do you think that sort of shoestring approach also sets you in good stead?
Yeah, I do, because it's made us resilient and it's made us creative. So again, we survived COVID and we thrived during COVID, and it was fucking hard. And I spent a lot of time being angry. And as a business, at that point, we only had the Belgrave restaurant, but we still had 23 staff, and of those, 20 of them were not on JobKeeper because they were not residents. So, because we did employ international students, and we all know that story, we all know how that worked. And then obviously when the 5 kilometre rule came in, that's pretty fucked for us, because our 5 kilometres is trees, and trees don't eat curry. So you can sit back and you can complain, and obviously you're angry, or you can use this to fuel you. And for us at that time, we started delivering our food to places further afield. We thought, rather than go down the mountain to the flatlands, as we call you guys down there, we decided to go the other way and look after the communities of Warburton, Reefton, Kinglake, Hillsville, and that strategy, and which just came out of like we don't have money to pay for PR or marketing particularly, So it came out of, okay, how are we going to do this? And we use social media, Facebook groups to do that. And that saw us survive COVID. And I was very, very transparent with our community about what we were doing. So every Monday I would put on our socials, this week we turned over $15,000. Of that $15,000, $12,000 of it was Warburton or Hillsville or wherever we were. $3,000 of it was Belgrave. Of that $15,000, our wages were blah, blah, blah. Our cost of goods was blah, blah, blah. Our rent was blah, blah, blah. So I was very, very transparent with the community as to what we were doing. Then, and that has become a silver lining, and one of the reasons that we opened Warburton. It was not intentional to open a second restaurant at Warburton.
What do you think that transparency does?
Well, I think it educates people, because most people don't understand the cost of running a restaurant. They don't understand the impact of the wage increases, and we all need a living wage. It's not about that, but they don't understand the true costs of running a restaurant and that meal that is sitting in front of you. So on our socials, again, I often will put up, like everybody, we get a mixed range of Google reviews, but I don't ignore them. I always respond to them, and I use them as an opportunity to educate people. So if somebody is on there telling us that Kerala beef curry and parota is too expensive, I will literally, in our response on our reviews, break down the costs of that plate to them. So literally like the cost of the goods, and then I'll explain, the staff wages are this much, of this, of this, of this. I'll literally break it down on our response to them. I'm not justifying, I'm educating. And the same thing goes on with social media. I'll then take that bad review and I'll then put it on our social media and share with our community. And so many people are like, I had no idea. I had no idea that is, now I understand why that butter chicken is that price, or that beef and parota is that price. Not everybody will. I mean, our social media gets a lot of traction and commentary, but in the restaurant itself, people will come and go, now I understand. They might verbally say that to us, yeah.
What strikes me, Billy, is that do you think you're able to have these honest conversations to lay it out for people in the way that you do because you've already created that empathy, those open channels of communication in the community?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm confident in our business now. You're always I've become confident in our business, and I know that our community respects us. So I feel I'm more than happy on behalf of other restaurants as well to share that information. Or, for example, I'm more than happy to help fellow restaurant owners deal with situations in their community. So I'm helping the Indian restaurant over in Hillsville at the moment. Just really hardworking, just really hardworking, not being there that long. Like everybody, they are struggling and they're not from that community. So trying to help them understand how to have that honest conversation. It's not easy. It's not easy, but yeah, we've definitely built up that goodwill.
So what advice could you give? I mean, what advice are you giving to this restaurant in Hillsville and thinking further afield, what lessons could other businesses take from what you do?
I'm not the expert, but I look for opportunity in community all the time. So, so for example, this restaurant in Hillsville, it's like, okay. So let's go back a bit, Dani. So. We started out as market food traders, as you know, and we still do that, and that opportunity is really front facing, and it allows you the opportunity to talk to your customers, be able to tell them all about the dish, and then potentially bring them to your restaurant. So we're still doing that. So, for example, we cooked at the weekend at the Kalorama Chestnut Festival. It's really bloody hard, actually, running two restaurants and still cooking at a community event, but it's really important that we're there because it shows our commitment to the community. That's a fundraising event. It shows our commitment to the community. It puts us out there as well. So the community, sorry, my head's all over the place. Yeah, so we are constantly keeping that relationship going by putting ourselves out there, not just being, inside the closed doors of the restaurants, hoping that people come to us. We will go to them, and then they will come to us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you want to talk about the particular challenge of that Chestnut Festival?
So the Chestnut Festival up at Kalorama, that is a notorious hotspot for not having internet reception. And even though we've cooked there for 8 years straight and we've had in exactly the same spot and we've had reception and we've never had a problem processing payments, on Sunday we weren't able to process payments. So, we lost, I don't know, a conservative 2,000 because we simply weren't able to process the payments. And even on that time, we were still like, we were still happy to give people the food and like, please come and sort this out with us later. And 95% of the time people do. So, but as a result of that, I was frustrated and at the situation because it's not the first time that it happens. It's happened when we've been cooking at festivals like Golden Plains Music Festival. It's happened when we cooked down at Emu Plains Market down at Balnarring. But we just kind of put that trauma behind us and move on to the next event. And but at that time, I thought, no, I'm going to actually gather the evidence and the impact that no phone reception is having on small business. So I went around all the foodies and the market vendors and gauged what phone operator they were using and how much they lost. And the intention of that was to take that to our local Member of Parliament. And obviously I rang 774 who wanted to speak to me about it, put it over our socials so that other market vendors could get on board with this campaign as well, because, you know, it is an issue that affects all of us, and it is an issue that affects the Dandenong Ranges in times of emergency as well. But this was actually about business as well. So I tapped into that food truck market community to try to address that issue.
It just makes me think, you can just work all the angles in small business, and then to be let down by mobile reception, it's just such a kick in the guts. And, you know, the fact that you're there still giving people, you know, your beautiful food is, you know, I mean, testament to, I suppose, you know, the real spirit that's behind your business. But yeah, you should be, I mean, people want to pay you. So it's just, yeah, it's really quite gutting. So Billy, what do you think then? Is hospitality broken?
Oh, look, I know we have our challenges, and I told you at the beginning I feel nervous about doing this because I know there are so many of us that are struggling. And I reflected, do I want to speak to you about this? Because we're fine, and I don't take that for granted. I can't take that for granted. But I guess I want fellow restaurateurs who don't have the finances behind them, who to understand that there are things that they can do. There are ways around this. Not easy. I'm always I'm always an ear if people would like that. I think we have to use these things as a opportunity.
Yeah, well, I'm really grateful to you, Billy, for speaking. I mean, I know you had some reservations about it, but I think your story is really powerful. I think, you know, it's really great for people to think about all the different communities that they are part of or that they could be part of, and to think about ways that they can serve those communities and in turn be supported by them. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
No worries. Thank you, Dani, for having us, having me, thank you for listening to our story.
Really appreciate it.
No worries. Take care.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.